Imagine walking into a room filled with noise, banners waving, slogans shouted, promises repeated. You feel inspired, moved, stirred, yet you don't know why. This is not coincidence, it's design, and Orwell saw it with terrifying clarity. Words are not just tools of expression. In the wrong hands, they become tools of mass persuasion. Orwell, a man who lived through the rise of totalitarianism, understood the weaponization of language better than anyone. He wasn't just worried about censorship, he was worried about something far more sinister. When language becomes so beautiful, so moving, so emotionally powerful, that people forget to question what's actually being said. This is how the masses are controlled, not through brute force, not through obvious lies, but through poetic distortions that feel like truth. He called it doublespeak, language that hides its true intention. War becomes peace. Slavery becomes freedom. Surveillance becomes safety. When you hear, "We're doing this for your own good," pause. That's usually when you're about to lose something important. Politicians don't say we're invading for oil. They say we're bringing democracy. Corporations don't say we're selling addiction. They say we're creating joy. Media doesn't say we're shaping your beliefs. They say we're telling stories. And the public, bathed in beautiful words, applauds its own manipulation. If you think this only happens in dictatorships, you've missed Orwell's deepest warning. The manipulation of words isn't just a tool of tyrants. It's baked into modern marketing, politics, even your workplace culture. Synergy, empowerment, alignment, wellness, diversity, all can be used as sincere ideals, or as sugarcoating for exploitation. The same word can either liberate you or leash you, depending on who's holding the mic. And if you don't become conscious of the game, you're not just a listener, you're a puppet. Because when language manipulates your emotions, it bypasses your mind. You feel before you think, and by the time you start questioning, the damage is already done. And if this content is making sense to you, then click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. Orwell didn't write 1984 as fiction. He wrote it as a mirror, a chilling reflection of what happens when language is no longer a bridge to truth, but a curtain that hides it. The brilliance of manipulation lies not in shouting lies, but in whispering truths, half-truths, wrapped in velvet. When something sounds beautiful, it lowers your guard. It bypasses skepticism. You accept not because it's right, but because it feels right. That's the danger. Beautiful words act like anesthesia. They numb you before the surgery, and by the time you wake up, something vital has already been removed. Your freedom, your voice, your independent thought. This is how propaganda thrives in broad daylight. It doesn't show up with a villain's face. It shows up smiling, offering solutions, painting futures, echoing unity. For the greater good, they say. For national security. For progress. But progress towards what? When Orwell talked about the Ministry of Truth, he wasn't describing a fantasy. He was warning us of a world where language is inverted, where truth isn't just hidden, it's reversed, where the dictionary becomes a weapon, not a reference. And here's the scariest part, it's happening quietly. Because when manipulation is aesthetic, not aggressive, it's harder to notice. It doesn't bang down your door, it walks in wearing perfume, carrying a flag, playing your favorite anthem. Even in daily life, this happens. A toxic boss doesn't say, "I'm exploiting you." They say, "This is a growth opportunity." A failing relationship doesn't say, "This is emotional manipulation." It says, "This is love. You're just not understanding it correctly." When words are used to dress wounds instead of heal them, you bleed beneath the surface. Smiling, nodding, applauding your own slow erosion. And if you think, "Well, I'm too smart to fall for this," remember, intelligence doesn't make you immune to emotion. In fact, the smarter you are, the more susceptible you may be, because the words used on you are smarter too. They're tailored, crafted, elegant lies for elegant minds. So, what do? You reclaim the pause, that sacred space between hearing and believing, between feeling and following. Because in that space, lies freedom. Every regime that has ever sought to control its people has first controlled their language. Because once you control language, you control thought. And once you control thought, obedience is no longer forced, it's volunteered. This is why Orwell was terrified of slogans, not because they were false, but because they were effective. War is peace, freedom is slavery, ignorance is strength. Each one is logically absurd, and yet they work, not by convincing you through logic, but by tiring out your resistance. Repeat something long enough, and it stops sounding strange. It starts sounding familiar, then safe, then true. This is the psychological sleight of hand Orwell exposed. The more poetic the language, the easier it bypasses the brain's defense mechanisms. Just like a song lyric that gets stuck in your head, manipulation through language doesn't argue with you. It haunts you. It embeds itself. It feels like your own thought, and once something feels like your thought, you defend it like your identity. This is why political speeches are rehearsed like theater, why ads are tested for emotional triggers, why influencers and CEOs carefully script their apologies, their rebrands, their "we hear you" statements. Because it's not about truth, it's about tone. If it sounds soft, it must be sincere. If it rhymes, it must be right. If it's said beautifully, it must be believable. But you must ask, who benefits from me believing this? Because the moment words are designed more to soothe than to reveal, you're in a battlefield, not a conversation. You're not being informed, you're being shaped. This is what Orwell meant when he said that political language is designed to make lies sound truthful. He was showing us the mechanics of mass hypnosis, where people walk willingly into control, hand in hand with words that feel like lullabies. And yet, hope remains, because the moment you see it, you can't unsee it. The spell starts to break. When you begin to hear the intention behind the words, not just the words themselves, you shift from being an audience to being aware, from manipulated to mindful. That's when language becomes what it was meant to be, not a weapon, but a mirror, a way to reveal truth, to connect, not confuse, to clarify, not cloud. And that is where real power begins. Let's bring this even closer to home. Think about how corporations use language today, not to describe reality, but to design it. A layoff isn't called a layoff anymore. It's called streamlining. A toxic product isn't harmful, it's under further research. A data breach isn't "we failed to protect you," it's "we take your privacy seriously." The manipulation is no longer aggressive, it's polished, marketed, trademarked. George Orwell warned us about this in Politics and the English Language, where he said, "If thought corrupts language, language can also corrupt thought." Let that sink in. The way we speak not only reflects our thinking, it shapes our thinking. And when corporations, governments, or ideologies set the rules for how you're allowed to speak, they're also shaping what you're allowed to think. Suddenly, questioning becomes aggression. Skepticism becomes disloyalty. Critical thinking becomes conspiracy. This is how control creeps in, not with boots, but with buzzwords. When every debate is reframed as a moral crisis and every alternative view is painted as dangerous, we stop looking for truth. We start looking for safety, and beautiful language feels safe. But Orwell's entire philosophy is rooted in this brutal clarity. If you give up clarity for comfort, you give up freedom for illusion. The more vague and decorative the words, the harder it is to see what's really happening behind them. Euphemisms become smoke screens. Metaphors become cages. And if you're not conscious of this, you end up living inside someone else's sentence. It's not that we shouldn't be poetic, it's that we should know when we're being seduced. You can admire how something sounds and still ask what it means. You can enjoy the rhythm of a phrase and still ask whose agenda it serves. Because in Orwell's world, which is increasingly our world, survival depends on discernment, on seeing through the glitter and reaching for the grit, on pulling back the curtain and confronting the machinery, on not mistaking decoration for depth. So next time you hear something that sounds a little too perfect, ask, does this inform me? Or does it massage me? Does this empower my thought? or does it pre-package it? Because once you start asking those questions, you're no longer the audience. You're the author again. So, how do we protect ourselves? How do we live in a world overflowing with poetic manipulation and not drown in it? The answer isn't paranoia, it's presence. It's not about rejecting all beautiful language, it's about reclaiming your right to pause, to think, to interpret. Orwell wasn't anti-beauty, he was pro-truth. And he knew that truth often hides beneath what sounds good, that the ugliest realities are often hidden inside the most elegant phrases. So your job, our job, is not to become cold or cynical, it's to become precise. Precision is power, because vague language creates vague thoughts. But clear language, no matter how uncomfortable, creates clarity. And clarity is freedom. Here's your personal rebellion. Question the polished sentence. Slow down the slogan. Translate every comforting phrase into raw meaning. When a politician says, "We're securing the border," ask, what exactly are they doing, to whom, and why now? When a company says, "We value your privacy," ask, what data are they collecting, and where is it going? When a friend says, "This is just how love works," ask, is that love, or control in disguise? Because once you start translating instead of just listening, you stop being controlled. You begin to see the machinery. You begin to hear the signal beneath the noise. You begin to write your own language, one that reflects reality instead of distorting it, one that liberates instead of lulls. Orwell didn't give us fear. He gave us a flashlight, a way to navigate the fog of persuasion and find the solid ground of awareness. So next time something sounds too smooth, too rehearsed, too perfect, pause, breathe, translate, because your mind is not their playground. Your emotions are not their lever. Your attention is not their trophy. It belongs to you, and only you. And the more aware you become, the more immune you are to manipulation dressed as beauty. In a world where everyone is trying to sell you a narrative, your clarity is your revolution. Use it. If this resonated, take a moment to subscribe. Drop a comment below, not for the algorithm, but to mark this chapter in your journey. If you made it this far, you're not just watching, you're remembering, returning, reclaiming your inner ground. So trust that the video YouTube shows you next, the one appearing now, is not random. It's the next doorway, the next layer, and it will meet you exactly where you are. We'll see you in the next depth. Depthoria continues.